that shouldn't be an issue. But since he's in the treasury, he should look around more, as he might find something else. He gets to the place where accessories and jewels are being held and spots a necklace, which he immediately snatches. This is the same necklace he wore in his past life as Hamel. It's a keepsake from his parents, who were both butchered by a monster. Of course, he had his revenge, but even so, he wore this necklace until the day he passed away. Why would this be here? Did Vermouth really recover his body? But he also wouldn't just leave it there to rot. The promise made between the demon of incarceration and Vermouth brought peace to the world, but the two remaining demon kings are still alive in Helmut because of this. They all promised to kill the 5 demon kings together. But just what kind of promise did they make? And also leaving his keepsake here. Just what was that Vermouth thinking? Perhaps it was his fault, as maybe there wasn't enough manpower to defeat the demon kings after his death. He doesn't need or want to resent Vermouth and his companions, as there must be a good reason they didn't kill the demon king. There are many weapons that he would like from this treasury, but he can't leave this, Hamel's keepsake, to gather dust in the Lionheart treasury. He comes out of the vault, and Gillard is surprised by his choice. Eugene notes that this is what he liked the most, and Gillard says that there are countless treasures in there, but Eugene notes that they are too much to handle for him currently. Gillard asks to have a look at the necklace and notes that it's just a simple, crude necklace with nothing special about it. So why would this be in the treasury? He points it at the lion's head, and it emanates red from its eyes. Gillard notes that this necklace isn't registered in the treasury and shouldn't have been there. Gillard says that this necklace holds no real value, and he wouldn't be able to buy a cheap sword if he were to sell it. Does he really want such a thing? Eugene says that he does, and Gillard notes that it can't be helped then, but he will have Robertin analyze it since it came from an unknown source and might be imbued with magic. Eugene asks if he can have it after, and Gillard promises that it will end up in his hands. He also says that since things turned out this way, and this item is technically not a Lionheart treasure, why doesn't he go back inside and choose another treasure? Eugene asks if he can really do that, and Gillard confirms it, as he promised he would let him choose one treasure from here. Eugene thanks him, and immediately goes in, while thinking that he's quite flexible, a surprising characteristic from a descendant of Vermouth. But this time there's no need to hesitate, and so he grabs Wined. He gets it out of its sheath, and thinks that now this sword is his. That night, Desira bashes him for not choosing a spear, as he's extremely good with that type of weapon. Eugene says that it was his choice, and he's good with swords, as she saw at the ritual. Gargus thinks that it's too light, and considering his strength, he should have picked something heavier, like a hammer or an axe. But now that the succession ritual is over, why doesn't he come back with him? As he will provide all of the muscle growth potions he wishes. Eugene screams that he doesn't need them, and Desira demands he stop talking with this meathead and draw his sword. Eugene does so, and she asks what kind of sword it is. He notes it's the Wyniad, and according to the Patriarch, the blessing of the Wind Spirit King is imbued within and can most likely summon him after he gains enough mana. Desira says that it is a cool sword, but she still thinks he should have gotten a spear. Eugene says that there were also a lot of spears in there, and she asks if he saw them. The dragon spear is Carbos, which apparently lets out a fire breath. Eugene lies and notes that he doesn't know what it looks like. She asks about the demonic spear Rustidos, which is the strongest weapon Vermouth used. Gargus says that he also knows of that spear, as it was used by the Demon King of Cruelty. This makes Eugene think about it, and 300 years ago, there were 5 Demon Kings in Helmut. Rank 1, Demon King of Ruin. Rank 2, Incarceration. Rank 3, Frenzy. Rank 4, Cruelty. And Rank 5, Slaughter. Gargus notes that Desira is wrong, as the strongest weapon used by Vermouth was the pulverizing flail Ziggullard, which was used by the Demon King of Slaughter. They start bickering about their favorite items, and Eugene thinks that he also didn't see that flail in the treasury. Of the many weapons Vermouth used, the ones he got from the Demon Kings were the spear and the flail. They are both way too scary to be held in the treasury, so maybe they were sealed somewhere else. The other two are still arguing, and Eugene notices how childish they are, so he leaves. He notes that both the spear and flail are great weapons, so it's hard to say which is better. But if someone were to ask him which weapon used by Vermouth was best, he could answer within a second. The Moonlight Sword, which is the fragment in the shape of a sword that was sealed away, even in the demon realm. Both the demon king of cruelty, who used the spear, and the king of slaughter, who used the flail, were defeated by the moonlight sword. He looks at Winnaid and thinks that this is the first real weapon he is using in this life. Gargus and Desira look at him, and he begins practicing with it, almost as if he's performing a dance. They're both mesmerized by how beautiful that is. In Gillard's office, Robertian analyzes the necklace but finds no magic within. Is this thing really from the treasury? Gillard confirms it, and Robertian asks if Eugene is not just playing a prank. Gillard notes that he would have no reason to, as if he didn't allow him to get another treasure. The child would still have gotten this. Robertian notes that it is true that it would be too much of a risk, but he would like to dig deeper as something is bothering him. Gillard asks how he's going to do it, and Robertian says that there's a magic that reads the memory of mana, and it was created by Senya, a great master in this field. Mana exists everywhere, and most things have it within them. So he will begin reading the memory of the mana that remains in this necklace. Gillard says that he will leave it to him, and so Robertian begins doing it and sees nothing suspicious, and what he can see is quite faint. He notes that he can't read further, as the magic from the treasury has stopped the memory of mana, and that the necklace is at least a century old. Gillard picks it up and notes that there's probably nobody alive to confirm where this came from. Robertian asks what he plans to do with it, and he says that he will give it back to Eugene, as it was an item that he was willing to sacrifice treasures to get. Robertian says that he likes him quite a bit, and Gillard smiles and gets up. He looks out of the window and says that there's no reason not to like him, and so he has a suggestion for him. He will take Eugene Lionheart in as an adopted child. Keon Lionheart comes to his chambers, and Eugene thinks that he's the youngest brother of Gillard, and considered a weirdo because he didn't marry yet despite being of marriable age, and going around with Gillard on his journey. He introduces himself, but Keon notes that he already knows who he is, as his performance in the ritual was amazing. Eugene slowly removes his hand and asks if he's here to pick him up. Keon confirms it, as Gillard wanted to send a knight, but he wanted to come personally, as he wanted to see Eugene for himself. Eugene asks why, and Keon notes that he already learned a lot about him, but wasn't able to see the ritual. It's ancient tradition that only the patriarch attends the ritual, but this time it seems he made an exception for Robertian, since he helped and all. However, he shouldn't see this as him throwing shade at his brother. He's just saying how it is. But now it also seems like he's complaining about family rules. Eugene notes that he shouldn't worry about it, and Keon says that his brother would have the same reaction. Eugene looks at him and thinks that, considering his mannerisms and free-spiritedness, he's as free as it gets, so that must be the reason he hasn't found a partner yet. While walking toward the patriarch's location, Eugene asks why he was summoned, and Keon notes that it was probably to congratulate him on his accomplishments. Eugene notes that he's already been complimented plenty, and it seems that even he doesn't know the reason. Keon says that it's not like he couldn't guess, but it's also something he just shouldn't get into. They arrive at the door, and he notes that he would like to talk with him more often. Eugene thinks so as well, knocks on the door, and is allowed passage. Kion gives him a final wink, and Eugene thinks that he's nice and all, but it's getting a bit much. Gillard apologizes for summoning him without notifying him further and says they should sit down. He puts the necklace on the table and notes that he made Robertian look at it, but it seems that it's just a normal necklace. They also tried to search its memory, but nothing unusual could be found. Eugene finds this surprising, as that magic is Senya's handmade magic, so she must have likely passed it down. Eugene asks what kind of memories are inside, and Gillard explains that the necklace was simply sold on the streets of the capital hundreds of years ago. Eugene finds this extremely strange, as he's very sure this is the necklace he wore, as he had it on for decades. Robertian also has no reason to lie, so did he perhaps make a mistake while reading the memories? Was there perhaps a spell cast on it that could trick even a magic tower master? But who would have cast it, Vermouth? There's too little information about this, but he's glad, as now he can keep it, right? Gillard notes that he did indeed promise that, so he can have it. Eugene puts it on and is happy to have it around his neck once again. Gillard says that he indeed called him for the necklace, but that's not really the only reason. He has an offer for him that's not bad, and might also be beneficial for his future. Gillard tries to say what it is, But Eugene stops him and notes that Seal is cute and all, but he has no intention of marrying someone just yet. He thinks that since he defeated Kyan, she has started acting nicer towards him, most likely to organize an arranged marriage. He thought that the patriarch was a nice person, but to think that he was this cunning. He continues and says that he's too young and would also need his father's permission and all that. Gillard says that he misunderstood something, as he wasn't trying to force him into an arranged marriage with Seal. Eugene sits in silence for a second and blushes heavily as he makes the worst assumption ever. Now he just wants to beat himself up for just thinking of it. Eugene asks what this is about, and Gillard finally says that he wants to adopt him. Eugene finds this just as shocking and thinks that it's not that bad of an idea to tie him down to the main family. Eugene notes that adoption is quite a surprising offer, and Gillard says that it's not as surprising as an arranged marriage, right? Eugene apologizes for that, and Gillard notes that if he wishes, he can also get his father, Jahard, into the main family. Eugene says that then he would have two fathers, but Gillard doesn't want this to become complicated and wants him to join the main family. He's a father of 3 himself, so he wouldn't dare try to steal a child from his father. And although he has never met Jahard before, he will respect him as one of his brothers. Eugene ponders heavily and wonders what to do. Eugene asks if he were to refuse this offer, would his father lose his respect? Gillard denies this and gets up. It's a bit embarrassing to say this out loud, but he's not petty, and if he were to refuse, that would be that. He will respect whatever his decision might be and wish him the best in the future. Eugene says that this decision is quite difficult, so he needs to talk with his father about it. Gillard notes that they will decide after the banquet, and he will have an envoy sent to Geidel for his father. Eugene thanks him and is lost in thought once again. He suddenly asks what he meant by having a good future in the main family. Gillard notes that if he grows up in this main family residence, he would enjoy many benefits, and they also have a few knights under their employment who would be able to teach him quite a lot of things. Eugene says that if he's ever adopted, he wants to learn from the strongest person, so if he becomes his son, can he learn from him? Gillard looks at him, and Eugene thinks that this is the perfect opportunity to see how strong the patriarch really is. Gillard smiles and notes that he could teach him, but if he really wants to learn from the strongest person here, there's someone else who fits that description perfectly. Eugene asks who it might be, and Gillard says that it's Kion, who has surpassed him for quite a while. He also asks if his father taught him anything about mana, and Eugene notes that he hasn't told him anything yet because he told him not to tell him anything yet, as he would have probably trained his mana without wanting to. Gillard notes that he's been training every day since he got here, without a skipped day. He thinks that mana stones are crystals of mana found within higher-ranked monsters, and it's customary to get started with mana with the help of a mana stone. However, the more efficient and big the mana stone is, the harder it is to obtain, and for a person to really get the most out of it, they also need someone capable. All of this would put a strain on Jahard's family, and that environment is just too lacking for Eugene's talent to truly shine. He sits down and thinks that he can't tell Eugene all of this and cause unwarranted hatred towards his family. So this will be discussed further with Jahard. He says that they discussed what he wants, and if that's okay, he would also like if they were to talk about things further. Eugene accepts this offer, and for a while, they talk about all sorts of things. Eugene decides to leave, and Gillard says that he should bring someone to escort him back, so he should wait a bit. Eugene notes that it's all right, as the annex is not far away, and he will head back alone to get some fresh air. While walking towards his accommodation, he notices the scent of perfume coming out from behind a corner, and it's quite potent. It's not moving, so someone must clearly be waiting for him. He continues to walk towards that place, and that's when Anasilla pops up and makes it seem like she wasn't stalking him all of this time, which he notices. He plays along and introduces himself. She says that she heard him and the patriarch have a discussion, but it must have been quite long, as she didn't notice he was still inside. Eugene asks if she wants to say something to him, and Anasilla thinks that this child is already daring and quite arrogant to boot. But it's not in the least surprising, as someone from a farm like him won against the main family, and also claimed victory in the succession ritual. He will surely experience limitless growth in the future, so it's better to be friendly to him than an enemy. Also, tying him down to the family with an arranged marriage using Seal is not a bad idea, and that's precisely why she had Seal stick around him. She wonders what they talked about, and Eugene notes that he shouldn't share the matters he discussed with the patriarch privately. She forces a smile and says that it's true, but she's not interrogating him here, as she wanted to say something to him herself. Eugene waits for what she wants to say, and she apologizes for how disrespectful Cayenne was, and also apologizes once again for not apologizing earlier. Eugene notes that there's no need for that, as he's already made peace with Cayenne. She says that he's quite mature for his age, and is also relieved that he thinks this way. She also made sure to give Cayenne a stern warning, so now she can only hope they get along in the future. Eugene says that of course they will get along well. They are a family that shares the same surname, right? Anasilla stares at him intently and thinks that he's not entirely wrong, but it just feels wrong to be basically called family by this child. He asks if he can leave, and she allows him to do so, noting that he should take a rest. While walking away, Eugene thinks that this is the same woman that tried to persecute him from the start, because he was of a branch family, so he shouldn't get involved with her if it's not needed. 2 days later, Jahard arrives at the residence and looks around worrisomely. Did Eugene really win the success ritual? His only son won against the well-trained Main family. He showed such talent since he was young, but he didn't have the ability to support that. He thought that at the ritual he would have to face reality, that the gap between the branch and Main families is stark and clear. That's when Eugene calls for him and waves, with the patriarch next to him. He immediately rushes over and embraces him tightly. He begins crying and says that he's extremely proud to have someone like him as his son. Eugene smiles and says that he already told him he would bring good news, right? Jahard notes that he indeed said something like that and apologizes for not believing him earlier. He also introduces himself to the patriarch, and Gillard does the same to him, also apologizing for the late invitation. Jahard shakes his hand and says that it's not an issue in the slightest, as he's just thankful he was invited in the first place. Gillard says that he doesn't want to take away family time, but could they both have a chat inside? Jahard agrees, and so he walks away. Gillard presents him with the offer of adoption and notes that if he were to adopt Eugene as his son, he would also be included in the Main family. Jahard looks down for a second before getting up. He says that he's sorry if this comes across as disrespectful, but as his father, he can't help but worry about his son's future here. Gillard asks what kind of worries he has, and Jahard explains that he's worried the Main family will harass Eugene. He already has 3 children, so if his son were adopted, he would be considered a freeloader. Gillard says that he understands, as he also doesn't want to limit Eugene's future. But the Main family takes the legitimate bloodline extremely seriously, and he's almost sure they wouldn't just accept a child from a branch family so easily. And additionally, Eugene wouldn't be able to succeed in the patriarch position. But as long as Eugene doesn't become greedy, his talent will truly blossom if he were with the Main family. As his child, Eugene would become closer to his other kids, and a better future would be made for him as a result. Jahard notes that all of this is correct, but he at least wants to talk with his son about this first. Eugene trains with his sword, and his father pops up, looking quite depressed. Eugene notes that the news must have been quite shocking, and he asks what that expression is about. Jahard looks at him, and spots that he has Winnet on his waist. So that must be what he chose from the family treasury. Even if he were to sell everything he ever owned, their family just wouldn't be able to afford that sword. He looks away and says that the patriarch wants to adopt him. Eugene says that he already knows that since he told him first and foremost. Jahard notes that he would like for him to become his child, as it is in his best interest for a better future. However, he may have to go through hard times later because of this. Eugene scratches his head and says that it may be so, but he already knows him. Eugene Lionheart would never back down. Jahard grabs him by the shoulders and says that he and his mother gave him that name, and he should never forget that. Eugene says that he knows, and that even if he were adopted, his real father would still be Jahard Lionheart. Jahard hugs him tightly and thinks that it's quite a pain that he's being adopted, but he would be gaining quite a lot, so it's quite worth it. He also has no intention to become patriarch, but nobody will really believe him. So the first and second wives will surely try to keep him in check. However, there are 2 ways to deal with complaints and hostility. Ignore it outright, or destroy them. Gillard invited all the families of the children who underwent the ritual to the banquet. and it was mostly to bless the victory of a branch family, rather than focus on the shame brought upon the main family. Some people come up to Jihad and congratulate him on becoming part of the main family. Gargi's father also wants to give him their muscle growth potion if he's interested. Eugene looks at this and thinks it's best not to mingle there, as he would receive an annoying amount of attention. Anasilla and Kyan stand in a corner, and she pushes him to be more confident, as he will be compared to that person from now on, and when they look at him, they will only be reminded of the duel he lost. They will also laugh that a main family member, a direct descendant, lost the succession ritual to a branch child. Kyan looks down, and his mother says that it can't be helped, and he needs to feel this embarrassment but shouldn't despair, as even if people laugh and bash him, he's still her son and a direct descendant. She leans towards him and notes that Eugene can't become patriarch, but he shouldn't feel relieved about this, and instead try even harder, while also becoming friends with Eugene. Kyan is surprised by this, and asks if it's because they're siblings. Anasilla notes that this is exactly why he must treat him like a brother, so that he can help him later. Kyan agrees with his mother, but is a little shy and wonders how to become friends with him. While eating some cake and following him around, Seal notes that they are siblings now, so shouldn't he call her big sister by now? Eugene notes that she's only a few months older, and she says that she's the little sister because she was born seconds apart from Kyan. Eugene says that is entirely different, and while she nags him to do it, he thinks that he would rather bite his tongue and die than call this brat his big sister. In the Patriarch's office, Roberian says that he can't take Iode as his disciple unconditionally, as at the Red Magic Tower, summoning magic is the specialty, and he will be tested for aptitude on that. Iode asks what will happen if he does have an aptitude for that certain kind of magic, and Roberian says that it's good. But Aroth still won't recognize the name Lionheart. Unless he's talented enough for him to disregard other aspiring mages entirely, he can't take him as a disciple. Iode agrees, and is quite saddened by this. But Roberian notes that since he's a longtime friend of the Patriarchs, he will give him many opportunities. He will be protected from discrimination and held in the environment most suitable for his preferred magic type. Iode finds all of this exciting and thinks that even if he's not his direct disciple, it wouldn't matter. He's just happy to leave this nightmarish family and study magic in peace. He looks at his father, who notes that there's no need for reassurance and that it's entirely his choice. His mother says that this is a special opportunity his father has given him, so he should take it with some grace, as he has shown interest in magic ever since he was young. But he should not forget that he is her son and the one who will become patriarch, so even in the magical land of Aroth, he shouldn't forget this fact. Gillard screams at her to stop, and she says she's only encouraging him, as a mother should. She thinks that bastard of a woman, Anasilla, will be jumping with joy when Iode leaves. But she doesn't have any other choice, as Iode is too naive and weak-willed to be called a descendant of this bloodline. He's much better off making connections with various mages, growing in power, and making friends who will support him. She reminds him that he's a legitimate son of Lionheart, and he looks down while agreeing with her, the only thing he can do. The day after the banquet, Roberian left with Iode for Aroth, and the other children of the branch families also returned to their own places. Eugene and Jihad ended up living in the now empty annex, and today Eugene will be learning mana for the first time after reincarnating. Mana development has two categories: breathing and body training. Breathing is where one collects mana from the atmosphere with their breathing, and body training is when one moves their body to collect mana. Neither is easy, but breathing is superior. In his past life, he used body training to practice mana, and later changed to breathing, as Senya and Vermouth highly advised. The Lionheart mana training technique is breathing. He arrives where Kion is waiting for him, who says that they should get going and start. Eugene thinks that mana veins are the areas where mana is most concentrated. Deep in the forest of the main family, there's a mana vein that is only available to those of direct lineage. It also wasn't made naturally. Instead, Vermouth created it himself over 300 years ago. He thinks that Vermouth is the best person to create a mana vein all by himself, and Kion asks if he's nervous about this. But it's quite the opposite, as he's excited. Kion notes that it won't be an easy task, and he will help him. But he may struggle as it's his first time, and he's not that young yet to be able to feel the mana at a higher potency. He says that Seal and Kyan started their training when they were just 6, and it only took them 4 days to feel mana, and Iode around a week. Branch families usually start training with mana at his age, but apparently it can take up to a month to even feel mana. However, it won't take him that long, as he's here to help, and they also have a mana vein. Eugene asks how long it will take, and Keon guesses around 10 days. Eugene scratches his head and laughs, noting it won't even take him a mere 10 minutes. Finally, they arrive at a lonely cabin. They enter and Keon urges him to follow. They go down a flight of stairs and arrive at a basement that's quite large. Keon tells him to sit in the middle, and he does so. He explains that their mana training technique was passed down by the great Vermouth, and there's a rule that branch families can't use or inherit the technique. So everyone in the branch families is taught the red flame method, which lacks the utility of the original. Keon shows him the original technique. The white flame method. Eugene thinks that he hasn't heard that name, but he recognizes that unique form quite vividly. Vermouth had a high-density layer of mana that surrounded his body, and it materialized in the form of pure white flames. It almost looked like the mane of a lion, and the past him was never able to really surpass those flames. Keon notes that since it will take a while for him to sense mana, they should concentrate on his breathing right now. Eugene notes that he can actually feel it already, but Keon says that it's his imagination, and uses a technique to teach him that it's just his senses playing tricks. He puts a ball of mana around him, and Eugene immediately points to where it is, again and again, until I asked how long they would be doing this for. Keon is extremely surprised, and thinks that this child is evolving at an extremely fast pace. He sighs and crouches down to his level, noting that if he already feels mana, they can start. From this moment on, he shouldn't say a word, and concentrate on everything that's going on inside of his body. They begin, and Keon urges him to imagine that he's breathing in the same rhythmic flow that mana has. Once he does that, he should imagine that he's guiding it along the proper path, to his heart. Keon lets go of him and slowly backs away, noting that he's doing very well. But this doesn't even cut it, as Eugene is already capable of fine-tuning his mana at such a young age, and the only thing he needs to do now is allow the mana within his body to flow fully. While he meditates, Eugene thinks that this growth is just plain crazy. Sensing and breathing mana wouldn't have been hard for him to do in his past life. But this body is like it was made for absorbing mana. He can feel how the amount of mana within his body grows with every breath he takes. But due to his young age, there's a limit to how much he can take, so he should stop for now. He makes a core in his chest, and Keon notes that the size of his core is amazing, as normal people start with a smaller core and train in mana afterwards to grow its size. He says that he's a monster, and Eugene asks if he meant that as a compliment. Keon says that they should head back now, and while they do so, he says that the biggest difference between the white flame and red flame methods is that the red flame can't spit out their cores. With the white flame method, his core will split naturally once he passes a threshold. He will be much more efficient with his use of mana, and the cores will resonate with one another to increase their power by quite a lot. They call those cores stars, and Vermouth the Great had an extremely high number of 10 cores. Gillard and himself are at 6 stars. Seal Cian and Iode are all 1 stars, but the twins will surely become 2 stars by the next year. Eugene asks how long it will take him, and Keon notes that if he doesn't slacken his training, he will grow much, much faster. He says that he will do his utmost and thinks that this is insane. Not only did he reincarnate into an extremely good body, but he's also learning Vermouth's training technique, so there's no way he will be lazy. He isn't sure he will be able to reach 10 stars, but he will figure out the details of the method later, as he can adjust it as he wishes. They arrive back, and Keon notes that he will be the one to tell Gillard what happened, so he should get some rest. Eugene says that he will do just that, but he lies, saying that there's something he really wants to do first. Nina is surprised that he has already returned, and he orders her to fetch Winad for him. He unsheaths the sword, and wonders if this will really work. He imbues mana into the sword, and it starts a tornado, which almost sends Nina flying. Inside of it, someone talks with Eugene, but calls him by his original name, Hamel. Eugene recognizes this voice, and it's none other than the king of the wind spirits, Tempest. He instantly recognizes him as Hamel, and Eugene asks how he knows. Tempest notes that he couldn't possibly forget one of Vermouth's companion's souls. Even if time passes and his body changes, his soul will never truly change. It's also been quite a while since he last received Winad's call. He came here because he was curious, as he thought one of Vermouth's descendants used it. Eugene gets straight to the point and asks why Vermouth didn't slay the Demon King. He demands Tempest speak, as he was still with them even after his death. Tempest says that he can't hope to decipher Vermouth's mind, but in the battle against the Demon King of Incarceration, Vermouth unexpectedly sheathed his sword. Eugene is quite shocked at this fact, and Tempest says the battle was the fiercest of all, but the ending was lacking in that regard. The only ones left standing were the Demon King of Incarceration and Vermouth. That's when he chose to sheathe his sword. He did not slay the Demon King, and he left. Eugene sits in silence for a second, but he just can't believe that. He notes that everyone here says that Vermouth made a promise to the Demon King, so what was it? Tempest notes that the only ones who know about said promise are the ones who were present when it occurred. From the moment Vermouth sheathed his sword, he became unable to interfere in any way. Eugene screams that he said everyone except the Demon King of Incarceration and Vermouth died. So is he telling him to get answers from a dead man? Tempest says that he does not have time to answer, as he forcefully opened a gate to talk with him, which he now has to close. They will meet at a later date, when he has become strong enough. While screaming, Eugene falls down, and the tornado dissipates. Nina sees him passed out and is extremely horrified. Later he wakes up in bed, but a headache instantly rises. He thinks that this feeling means his mana was depleted, which is quite natural considering he had so little in the first place. Spirits remember creations by their souls, and he recognized him as Hamel. There's always been the thought in the back of his head that he's not really Hamel, but just a creation from his memories. But now he's certain of who he is. Nina comes inside and notices that he woke up. Eugene asks how long he was asleep for, and she notes that it was about half a day. She also says that the Patriarch and Keon are in the annex as they speak, so she will bring them here. They arrive, and Gillard says that he heard everything from Nina about how a great wind blew around him the moment he held Winad. Did he perhaps summon a wind spirit? Eugene looks at him and thinks that he can't lie, considering the size of the storm that a lot of people saw, so he will have to tell the half-truth. He says that the King of Wind Spirits descended, surprising Keon quite a bit. Eugene notes that he said he just wanted to see who called upon him, as it's been a while since anyone truly has. Keon says that nobody has been able to summon the King of Wind Spirits since Vermouth passed. Eugene confirms it, and also adds that he said he lacked power, so he was looking forward to when they would meet again. Gillard laughs and finds all of this nothing short of amazing. He is truly an amazing child, as he also heard from Keon about how he felt mana instantly, and his fast use of the white flame method. That alone can be considered a huge achievement, but to know that he got some attention from the great King of Wind Spirits? Amazing. Eugene smiles, and Gillard notes that Keon will teach him once he has rested for a few days. Originally, he wanted to begin training after the blood sacrifice ritual. However, right now, the most important thing they should do is support his growth as much as they can. Eugene says that he appreciates it deeply, but also doesn't want to bother Keon that much. He notes that it's no bother, as he wants to teach him personally. He will also be teaching Cayenne and Seal, and the Patriarch will come and help whenever he can. Gillard still smiles and thinks that it would be quite nice if this were to motivate Cayenne and Seal to be better. They are at the training grounds, where Seal says that Eugene just became a White Flame 1-star. Cayenne notes that he knew already, but Seal says that it took them basically forever to become that. Cayenne gets furious and says that it wasn't forever, as even among their ancestors, 1 month is extremely fast. They both think that in one meager day, Eugene was able to become a whole star. And so, after this conversation, they begin training. Eugene sits silently in his room, waiting for everyone to leave, and when they do, he immediately picks up the Winid and unsheathes it. From the tip of the sword, a sylph comes out, which is a low-grade spirit, but this is probably the most he can do with his current mana. He asks her if she's heard anything from the king, but she doesn't respond, and he thinks that they aren't intelligent, so he probably can't have a conversation with one of them. So naturally, he resorts to threats, a language that has no barrier, telling the sylph that he's going to kill Tempest if he finds out he was lying. The fairy doesn't like his attitude one bit, and she flies away through his hair. Eugene thinks that he was the only one to die in the Demon King of Incarceration's castle, as all of his comrades, excluding Vermouth, were revived in the demon real Helmut. The only ones who truly know about the promise are either the demon king of incarceration or Vermouth. He will have to visit Helmut someday, but not just that. Aroth, Eurus, and Luhar. Maybe in these places, he will be able to find traces of his long-lost companions. However, in his current state, he can't, as he still has a child's body. But one day, he surely will. While looking into the mirror, Eugene notes that time sure does fly fast, as he's now 17 years old. He thinks that it's quite nice to have such a pleasant body, but he did train in mana every day after all. He's also a 3-star white flame. But this isn't really enough, as to use this temple of a body, he will have to learn things that he didn't in his past life. While doing their daily training, Eugene tells Kyan that he will go to Aroth to learn magic. Kyan wants to know how he can spout such nonsense out of his mouth, and Eugene says that this very morning, he was training as usual with the white flame method, and suddenly, he could do this. He spins the stars into his body in rapid motion, and white energy envelops every crevice of his body. Kyan is extremely shocked and asks how such a thing could be possible. This guy started training mana 7 years later than him, but he's already a 3-star, while he remains a lowly 2-star. Eugene notes that yes, it is indeed impossible, but he's a genius. Kyan says that he wants him dead, but Eugene notes that they can't do that since they are brothers. Kyan says that he beats him up like he's going to really kill him every single morning. Eugene notes that he was the one to invite him to training every single morning, so they can stop if he really wants to. Kyan avoids his gaze and asks why he wants to learn magic all of a sudden. Has he really forgotten what happened to Iode? He followed Roberian to Aroth to learn magic after the secession ritual, and couldn't even come close to becoming his disciple, as he wasn't that talented. He's basically been a burden for Iode these last couple of years because he couldn't achieve a single thing, despite his many connections. Eugene notes that he just says whatever comes through his thick head, but Kyan feels he didn't say anything wrong. However, he just stayed at the main house and trained, instead of arrogantly trying to learn magic. If he were to go to Aroth right now, Seal might be upset. Eugene laughs and notes that she stopped talking to him a while ago and started training by herself shortly after. He drops his sword and leaves, causing Kyan to ask where he's going. Eugene says that he will be going to the Patriarch and telling him about his wishes and how he became a 3-star. Kyan can only feel like a shadow before this guy, and he wonders why he also wants to learn magic now. Gillard is quite surprised by his request, and asks if he truly means what he just said. Eugene confirms that indeed, he wants to go to Aroth and learn magic. Gillard demands to know why that is, as no one in their whole ancestry has managed to become a 3 at his age. If he were to continue like this, it might be possible for him to even become a 4-star before he becomes an adult. Eugene notes that he realized something when he became a 3-star student. Mere training, as he's been doing, won't be enough, considering how much growth he has. He wants to learn many things and doesn't know if he really has talent for magic. But if he were learning it, he may have a new perspective when it comes to mana. All around, it would be a great experience for him to learn a new subject, and not at all a meaningless venture. He bows down to the Patriarch, who thinks a bit before looking at him. He asks him to raise his head and says he can't deny such passion for learning, even as a Patriarch. But he must promise him one thing, not to get involved with dark magic. In Aroth, there is a dark magic tower with dark mages. Unlike in the past, there aren't any rumors, and people no longer look at those people in a negative light. But Lionheart is the bloodline of the great Vermouth. So naturally, dark magic is forbidden and frowned upon, even if it's not directly written in their laws. Eugene looks down, and he knows all too well that dark magic is the source of all evil, and that only cruel things can come from it. He tells Gillard that there's no cause for concern on that part, as he hates dark magic with a passion. While walking away, someone knocks on a door. It's Seal, who notes that she wants to talk with him. He notes that she can come out here if she really wants to talk, but she denies it, as she smells of sweat due to the training. She asks if he's truly going to Aroth, and he in turn asks if Kyan told her. She confirms this and also says that she knows about him being a 3-star as well. But why is he leaving? Eugene says that he wants to study magic, but she notes that he has spirit magic, and they could also just invite a mage from the capital. However, the most important thing would be that she and Kyan would catch up to his skill level while he was gone. Eugene says that he's quite fine with that, as it will be much more fun training with them if that were to happen, but it's also been a while since they last fought. Seal blushes and asks if he will still go to Aroth if they are to spar from now on. Eugene says that he's still going, no matter what, and she calls him a bastard while also asking how long he will leave for. Eugene says that he will know when he gets there, but for a few years at least. She wonders why he wants to leave for so long, as nothing good comes out of leaving home. Eugene can only sigh, and Seal also asks about his father, Jahard. Eugene notes that he will be just fine without him, as he's used to the main family lifestyle and has lost weight from regular hunting as well. She still tries to make him stay, noting that Keon or her brother will be upset, but Eugene assures her that he will still be going and wishes her good luck with her training. While walking away, she pops her head out of the door and asks if he will truly be going one last time. He just waved her goodbye, making her quite sad, as she also didn't want him to go. On the day of departure, Eugene talks with his father, who urges him to not go around bad influences, even while in Aroth, and to study diligently. Eugene, in turn, says that he shouldn't laze around during his exercise because he's not here. His father laughs and gets up, noticing just how much taller he is now. But most important of all, he should just take care of himself. They all see him off at the portal gate, and Gillard asks if he really doesn't want any guards to go with him. Eugene says no, as he's quite confident in his ability to defend himself. Gillard thinks that he's already 3 stars, so he should be fine, which is not something he can say for Iode. His father begins sobbing uncontrollably, and Eugene urges him to stop, as he was acting brave earlier. So what happened now? It's not like he will change his mind because he's crying, so he should at least say goodbye to his son with a smile on his face, right? Through the tears, he finally manages to pull out a smile, which Eugene appreciates. He turns to the gate, and with a last farewell, leaves. He arrives at the Mage Kingdom of Aroth's capital, Pentagon. The 5 magic towers here create a pentagram with the castle at its core. Eugene rides around in a flying vehicle of sorts, and thinks that he's been to Aroth in his past life as well, but it's much, much different. For starters, it has a floating station, and out of all the kingdoms, Aroth is the only one that keeps a warp gate in the sky. The stations, held up by lots of different and unique magics, symbolize the greatness of Aroth's magic, while also being convenient and very marketable. His tour guide notes that this view is the best part of Aroth, to him at least. He also notes that the Pentagon has 15 floating stations, and all were made by the great and wise Senya. Eugene fakes a reaction and asks if this carriage is also made by her. The tour guide confirms this, and notes that he shouldn't worry about safety, as it uses magic from hundreds of years ago but is maintained regularly. So naturally, the acid rate is very low. He wants to talk about tour spots, but Eugene stops him and notes that, first and foremost, he wants to visit Senya's mansion. The tour guide says that he made a great choice. As in the Pentagon, one must see these 3 things: Senya's mansion, the magic towers, and the stunning view at night. They make their way there above the streets, and the guide notes that 300 years ago, Senya was able to become the youngest magic tower master after coming back from the demon realm. Due to that, there's a big statue of her in the Green Magic Towers Square. The mansion they are going to is where she stayed until the very end. 200 years ago, she left her mansion, leaving behind only a letter that said that she was retiring. Eugene notes that it mustn't be known where she went, and the guide confirms this, as countless mages, including her disciple, tried to desperately track her down, but none were able to find her whereabouts. The worst part of this is that she went missing on her birthday, and this is only his opinion, but he thinks she went to the demon realm with Helmut. Eugene asks why he thinks so, and the guide notes that 200 years ago marked the 100th year after she regrettably left behind Hamel's body to rot. So he must have gone to that exact same spot. Senya was just thinking of her dead companion, and she wanted to avenge him. That's what really made her leave. He knows too well about how Hamel, on his deathbed, confessed his real feelings to Senya. Eugene gets extremely mad and demands he stop talking crap. The guide is quite surprised by his reaction, and Eugene tries to recover the situation, as he lashed out quite harshly. The guide says that he must not like the romance side of the story, but there are many other theories as to where she went. It's known quite well that she hated anything that was related to dark magic and demons, as she was against the dark magic tower being built until she left. Some speculate that dark mages, who wanted to see that project done, assassinated her. Eugene says that a lowly dark mage couldn't hope to kill Senya. The guide agrees and notes that this theory was also widely rejected at the time. Eugene thinks that a dark mage is nothing against her, but a demon king is a whole different story. Helmut is still sponsoring Aroth through the dark magic tower, so Senya's being alive most likely bothered them quite a lot. Enough to want her death, that is. They arrive at the mansion, and Eugene can't help but wonder if his comrade is truly dead. At the entrance of the mansion, countless students pray to pass their tests, as even in the magical world, one can't escape the hellish reality of exams. Eugene is surprised at the number of people gathered here, and the guide explains that these are students ready for the magic recruitment test. But none of them can go in because they are, to put it bluntly, poor. Just entering the mansion costs thousands of cells, and that's only for the garden. You have to pay much more than that to go inside. Eugene wonders why it's so expensive, and the guide says it's because there's demand for it, as people really want to see it. There's also a myth that if one prays to Senya's portrait in the center of the mansion, they will surely pass their recruitment exam. Eugene gives the guard his ID and spots that he's from the Lionheart family. They immediately let him inside, and the guide waited for him at the door. It closes behind him, and Eugene can now freely see just how that bastard of a woman lived. While walking through the mansion, he thinks that it's quite huge, and it's said that Senya lived here for 100 years. He remembers the day when she asked what he wanted to do in the future, and it surprised him quite a lot. He wants to know why she wants to know, and she notes that just because they have basically the worst jobs for their age, so he needs to find something to do that will bring him happiness once all of this is over. Hamel says that he never really thought about it, and Senya notes that Moron said he wanted to become a king of all things. Hamel says that he's just a crazy guy, as you can't just become a king like that. Senya notes that they should leave them be, as people are allowed to dream about what they want. Hamel asks if she's drunk to say such cringy things with such a straight face. Senya curses at him, as she was trying to be serious for a moment here, and he asks what her plans are for that peaceful future. She's hesitant to answer, and while Eugene stares at her portrait, he thinks of it. She wanted an average life, like other people, where she would get married, have a kid, and eventually become a grandma. He thinks that he should have done that and achieved her dreams. So why did she decide to live for so many years? He tries to touch the portrait, but a keen-eyed guard spots him and says that touching is not allowed. Eugene curses at him for ruining his emotional moment and walks away, thinking that he's not only here for portraits, but for the huge library that she has. He arrives there and touches the countless books, noting that there might be a clue somewhere around here. The guard followed him and says that isn't touchable either. Eugene scratches his head and thinks that the only clues he will be getting will be from the book titles. He also thinks about his necklace, which shared countless memories with him but was just locked up, unregistered in the treasury, and it just happened to catch his eye. There's no way it's just a coincidence. Perhaps, just as the Tempest recognized him, so did the necklace show up because of his soul. Someone messed around with his reincarnation, and if it was Senya, she would have left something, right? Later, he makes his way back to the portrait and thinks that he scoured every nook and cranny of this place, but nothing was found. Now that he can only do whatever he wants, as he has no instructions from her or anyone else. What is he supposed to be doing with zero information? He sees the guard turn his back on him, and he flips Sena off, noting that if she doesn't like it, she can come and find him herself. If she's alive, that is. It is now night, and the guide is quite surprised and tired that he spent so much time in the mansion. Eugene hands him a golden coin for making him wait, and the guide asks where to go next, as there are a lot of famous tourist spots and amazing restaurants everywhere. Eugene notes that they should go to the Red Magic Tower now, and he doesn't need to guide him afterwards. While they ride there, Eugene asks him if he knows anything about Iode Lionheart. The guide says that there's nobody in the Pentagon who doesn't know his name, and Eugene notes that he's staying at the Red Magic Tower, and his older brother has been in Aroth for 4 years already. Could he perhaps tell him any rumors about him? The guide is hesitant to say anything, and Eugene notes that after his adoption, he didn't get to talk with his brother Iode once. So he needs to know something about him to at least make conversation. He promises not to be angered by his words, nor will his family or anyone else. He swears by his name. All he needs to do is tell him rumors about his brother. The guide says that he doesn't know that much, but it said that Iode leaves the magic tower every night seeking pleasure. Eugene thinks that he's 19 now, so he's allowed some pleasure, right? The guide explains that it's not normal pleasure, it's succubus pleasure. Eugene immediately gets furious and demands to know why the hell there are succubi here. The guide calms him now and notes that although they are not in Helmut, the dark magic tower exists, and it also holds quite a few demons as well. Eugene finds his brother shameful and asks if his older brother is really playing around with a succubus. The guide explains that it's not for fooling around, but rather for pleasure. Like any other city, Aroth also has a dark alleyway that acts as a necessary evil. Here it's famous for its black market, but there are a few stores that make succubi serve as waitresses, and rumor has it that Iode visits them quite regularly. Eugene asks where that alley is and what its name is. The guide says it's named Bolero Valley, is not open during the day, and only becomes a red light district on red moons specifically. Eugene thinks he wasn't planning to meddle with Iode much and focus more on his studies while keeping a good distance. But this rat bastard, who calls himself Vermouth's descendant, is fooling around with a demon? Just how low has he stooped? The guide asks him to keep what they talk about a secret, and Eugene notes that he already swore on his name, so he won't tell anyone, not even that excuse of an older brother. Eugene notes that these are rumors for now, so unless he comes across clear evidence of this, he has to refrain from slapping the snot out of him. On the night of a full moon, in Bolero Alley, he will be there. Eugene arrives at the doors of the Red Tower, and a woman by the name of Hera greets him. She notes that the owner, Robertian, is waiting above, as he had planned to come greet him, but something really minor occurred. That's when an explosion happens from above, and Eugene asks if there's something going on. Hera says that he probably knows this, but the Red Magic Tower focuses mostly on summoning magic, which is, by and large, the magic with the highest possibility of failure. Two dark spirits come out of the blown-out window, but two red hands catch them and squeeze the life out of them. It was Robertian who looked in disgust at his students, noting that they were really geniuses. How did they even manage to summon shadow beasts from a lava shark summoning circle? Do they even comprehend what would have happened if those creatures ran loose? Shadow beasts hold a real form of intelligence and are mostly driven by instinct, so they would have started hunting people instantly. They try to apologize, but Robertian demands they pack their bags and leave now. That's when he spots Eugene and slowly descends to the ground. As if he were another person, he greets him warmly and notes how much he's grown over the years. Eugene says he looks the same as always. Robertian notes that it's because he's preserving his youth with magic, and Eugene takes a closer look at him, as he must have been training with mana up until now. He's strong, not even close to Senya though, but definitely for a tower master. Robertian says that he heard from Gillard that he's quite interested in magic. Is that correct? Eugene confirms this, and Robertian notes that it's truly an interesting and charming subject, but it's much harder to learn than most things. That's when he notices something's wrong and swings the tower doors open with just a glance. It seems that the rat, Iode, is spying on them. Eugene has to contain his anger, as that bastard was going around town, bragging that he fooled around with a damn succubus. Robertian urges him to come and greet his brother, and he's quite hesitating, as he doesn't know what to say. Eugene coldly greets him and says that he's looking forward to working together. Iode can only utter a simple reply, and Robertian notes that if he's done, he can go upstairs and read a book or something. He retreats back into the tower slowly, and Robertian apologizes for letting him see such a sorry sight. Eugene says that it's all right, and Robertian notes that, according to Gillard, he didn't want to learn magic from him, right? Eugene confirms it, as he doesn't want to bother the tower master, and if he were to learn directly from him, many people would start to complain about the Lionhearts using their authority. That is precisely why he wants to learn magic on his own. Robertian says that if he wishes so, they will do it like that. He won't intervene at all or make exceptions, but if he ever needed anything, he should ask Hera. He says that he welcomes him inside the tower while he's in Aroth, and it's not as luxurious as the family residence, but it's pretty decent all in all. 1 month after being at the Red Magic Tower, Eugene went to the library every single day, not missing one. He went to the library early to read up on magic and returned to his chambers late at night. That doesn't mean he only focused on magic, as he woke up extremely early to train his mana before his trips to the library and trained his body every single night until he started sweating profusely. Naturally, he was getting little sleep, but his body somehow got rid of all the fatigue in just a few hours of sleep. He thinks that he has read all of the books in the library, so he should get started. 300 years ago, Senya told everyone the steps of magic very clearly. They were her own steps. But after she became the Green Magic Tower Master at such a ripe age, countless mages imitated her methods. The first step was a circle, manipulating the mana of the body into a ring and circulating it to manifest magic. When the mana of a circle hits its limit, the circles automatically increase in number. Even after these 300 years, most magi are still using this circle method. The only people who don't are dark and spirit mages, who use completely different methods. He arrives in a room where Hera is waiting for him and asks if they are starting with a circle. Hera confirms this, as it's the most effective way, even after 300 years. Eugene notes that he wants to change it up a bit, and Hera says that changing a method is not advised. So how does he plan to do it? She looks at him and notes that the mana management used in magic and martial arts are worlds apart. So without the proper technique and chant, magic won't manifest. And he won't tell him this, but if it fails, he could get injured or, worse, die. Eugene says that this is why he wants to try it in the first place, and he thinks that this is why he read all of those books in the library. Hera thinks that he's young, so he won't get it unless he sees that it's not working for himself. He can try it, but if she feels that something dangerous will occur, she will have to intervene. As if he were to get injured, it wouldn't just affect her reputation, but the entire Red Magic Tower. Eugene agrees and starts emanating mana from his body. He thinks that the White Flame method and the Circle method have different ways to do them, but in essence, they are the same. With the White Flame method, mana is handled through the stars of the heart. With the Circle method, mana is handled through a hook. If he were to replace the circle with stars, he could increase his mana. He can also control the mana depending on what he needs, so it'd just be a bother if he tried to predict how it would go, and happened to be wrong. Hera looks at him and can't believe her eyes. He's controlling such an amount of mana perfectly. It should just disappear, but it doesn't. How is that even possible at his age? Eugene summons a fireball and slowly transforms it into a magic missile. Hera thinks that he just